Okay, guys. Hi. Today we're going to be doing Unit 7, Lesson 1, which is an expansion of our exponent review from Friday. Your warm-up is a which one doesn't belong, and we're looking at twos. And our question is, which expression doesn't belong? Be prepared to share your reasoning. As you guys know, throughout our units, when we do which one doesn't belong, there is a reason for each and every one not to belong. So go ahead and pause the video and tell me which one doesn't belong and why. So if you guys simplify each and every expression, we know that 2 to the third power is equal to 2 times 2 times 2, which equals 8. We know 8 equals 8. We also know that this is 2 times 2 is 2 squared, times 2 to the first power again also equals 8. So the one that sticks out to me as not belonging is this one, because 3 times 3 equals 9. So it's the only expression that doesn't equal 9. Or that doesn't equal 8, excuse me. For 2 to the third power, if you chose this one, I'm guessing it's probably because it's the only one that has an exponent of 3. Eight is our only standard form. And our only whole number. For the last one, we have 2 exponential numbers being multiplied together. If you came up with different reasons, that's awesome. These are just ones that I thought of. You are free to write down any of the other ones that you have came up with. But just make sure you have a reason for each and every one of them not to belong. So our first activity today is going to be 1.2, up or down. And we're finding the values of 3 to the x power and 1/3 to the x power for different values of x. What we're going to do is first I'm going to write out what it means to have that exponent of 1. So 3 to the first power is just going to equal 3. And then, of course, 1/3 to the first power just equals 1/3. For 3 to the second power, we know that equals 3 times 3, which ultimately equals 9. And 1/3 to the second power is equal to 1/3 times 1/3. And 1 times 1, I'm just multiplying straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. And 3 times 3 is 9. And if we keep going, we'll have 3 to the third power, which equals 3 times 3 times 3. And we know that 3 times 3 is 9, times another group of 3 would be 27. Now, I'm hoping that you guys start to see a pattern here, because if I do this, 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3, my numerators are going to keep on multiplying to being 1, and I already know what 3 to the third power is from the previous row, so I know that this is 1/27. And then for 3 to the fourth power, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Now, this is where it gets hard to kind of keep track of your numbers, so what I like to do is kind of combine first. I know that 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 3 is 9, then 9 times 9 equals 81. Now I can keep using that pattern. I'm not going to write it out in expanded form just because of room, but if I did, I knew that this would be 1/81. Now, I want you guys to go ahead and pause this video again. Write down what patterns you notice for number 2. Of course, there are no right or wrong answers here. You're just writing down what you see. Make sure that you are using full sentences and explaining your thoughts fully. for our third activity, this is going to be expression explosion, and we're going to evaluate these expressions. When we're evaluating these expressions, we really need to keep in mind that our order of operations hold true. So we really don't have any groupings here. We don't have any, let's say, operations in parentheses like this. We only have numbers in parentheses, which doesn't apply to the order of operations. So we need to make sure that we're doing our exponents first, then any multiplication that we have, then any, or division, and then any addition or subtraction moving left to right. So let's keep that in mind here. For the first one, we know that 5 squared is 5 times 5 plus 4 equals 25 plus 4, which then equals 29. Okay, this is how I would like you guys to write your workout for this. Let me know what that exponent means first, then add on the rest, simplify, then give your final answer. Again, go ahead and pause the video, try to come up with these on your own. Take a few minutes to work through these, and then we can go over it. Okay, so I'm hoping you guys didn't have too much trouble with this. You may have a few questions, which hopefully we will clear up in this video. So let's go ahead and start with number 2. Number 2 is 2 to the 4th power times 5. So 2 to the 4th power means I'm multiplying 2 4 times. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Then we're multiplying that times 5. Again, I like to group the larger ones. So I know that 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. So this is really 4 times 4 times 5, which I know 4 times 4 is 16. And then we need to figure out what 16 times 5 is. To make this easier for myself, I like to break this down into 10 times 5 and 6 times 5. I know 10 times 5 is 50. I know 6 times 5 is 30. So I can put those two together and know that 16 times 5 equals, let me write this out. Together that would equal 80. Now, for the next one, we have 3 times 4 squared. So I'm going to write this out again in expanded form. And I know that 4 times 4 is 16. And 3 times 16, 3 times 16, again, I'm going to break this down. 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 6 is 18. So I know that this together would be 48. So far we have 29, 80, 48, and let's keep going. We have 20 plus 3 to the 3rd power, 2 to the 3rd power. So our base is 2. We're multiplying that together 3 times. I know that 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, so this is really 20 plus 8 to equal 28. And for the 4th one, this is really just 9 times 2, and we know that's 18. And this might be the trickiest one for you guys since it's a fraction, but we'll just write it out in expanded form. And we have 1/9 times, if I multiply straight across, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Then I'm going to keep that pattern going. I know that 9 times 8 is 72, so my final answer is 1/72. Okay. So really, if you follow my pattern, I put it in expanded form, I simplify that exponent first, then combine with the other type of expression, whether it be a fraction, addition with a whole number, multiplication with a whole number, anything. Now for our last activity of the day, it's called 1.4 what's the value, and we're evaluating each expression for the given value of x. So for example, the first one is 3x squared when x is equal to 10. So how I would write this, if you guys notice, the only part that's being squared is the x value. So really this is 3 times x squared, So if I plug in, this is really 3 times 10 squared, which from our last activity we know how to do this. This would be 3 times 10 times 10. We know 10 times 10 is 100, so this is really 3. Oh, let's be consistent and use the dots. 3 times 100, which would be 300 as our final answer. Now that you kind of know how this works, pause the video and try the next 4. And welcome back, guys. Let's go ahead and go over this one. So we have 3 times, now we're doing 1/9 squared. So if I put this in expanded form, this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky for some of us. So 1 times 1 we know is 1, 9 times 9 is 81. Then if we're multiplying by a whole number, I can say that this is 3 wholes, or 3 over 1. Then I can multiply straight across. This becomes 3 81sts. Okay. Now, for this next one, our x is 4. So if I go ahead and plug this in, this is what it looks like. If I put it in expanded form, I have 4 times 4 times 4 over 4. Now, we can do this in 2 ways, and I'm actually going to show you guys both ways. First things first, I can kind of cross both of these out because I know 4 divided by 4 is going to be 1. And then I know 4 times 4 equals 16, so I can simplify it that way. Another way to do it is, I'm going to go ahead and erase this real quick, is to actually simplify the numerator and denominator, and then simplify, and we should get the same thing. So if I have 4 times 4, that's 16. 16 times 4 is 64. And then if I do this division, 64 divided by 4 is 16. So either way, you still get the same answer of 16. For number 4, we have 9 plus 1 to the 7th. If you guys did not put this in expanded form, I totally understand. However, expanded form for this is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times another group of 1. We all know that when you multiply 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, we're going to get 1. And of course, 9 times 1 equals 1, because that means I have one group of 9. Okay, similarly, we have the same idea with 1/2 here to the 7th power. Now, this is where some of our knowledge from our table is going to help us. So if we go back up to our table, really a fraction, in this case we had 1/2 to the 7th. Based on the pattern we see at our table, we can just figure out what 2 to the 7th power is, then put a 1 on top because it is a unit fraction. So we're going to go ahead and scroll back down. Okay, so we need to figure out what 2 to the 7th is. So I'm just going to do a little side work here. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that's 6 groups, and we have 7 groups. If we organize our information here, I know that 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 2 is 8. Now I need to figure out what... Shh, Bailey. So now I need to figure out what 16 times 8 is. So, again, I like to split, how I like to do multiplication is split it up. So I'm going to split it up into 10 times 8 and 6 times 8. I know that 10 times 8 is 80. I know that 6 times 8 is 42. Not 42, 48, excuse me. And when I add those together, I get 128. So, now that I've done that little piece, I know that this is going to be 9 plus 1 over 128. Whew. Now, really, when I add these together, this is just going to become 9 and 1, 128. Alright guys, so you are ready now to do your end grade graded classwork. Things to keep in mind when you're plugging in an x, make sure you're doing that exponent first. Follow your order of operations. Bailey, stop being a whiny little baby. When you're evaluating expressions, also keep those order of operations in mind. Also, our relationship between Bailey and keeping the relationship between our whole number bases and unit fraction bases, that connection there. And you guys should be great. Please make sure you are behaving. Once you guys are finished with this video, you can go ahead and listen to music as long as you're being well behaved. Your substitute does have the ability to take that privilege away from you if you choose to misbehave. After you're finished with your end grade check for understanding, you can go ahead and get on Dreambox. Remember, I'm expecting at least 3 lessons by the end of the week. That would be great if you guys could complete those today. If you can't, that's all right. We'll get some other opportunities throughout this week. Again, once you're finished with those 3 lessons, just keep going on Dreambox, and I might have a little surprise for whoever has the most Dreambox lessons this week, and a special treat for whoever is the best behaved class. So let's keep that in mind. At the end of class, please remember to put this in Unit 7 of your binder. We will be given our cover page and our self-assessment tomorrow on Tuesday, when we're going to start learning new, fresh 8th grade exponent material, which is going to be awesome. You guys have a great rest of your day.